everybody, and welcome back to the MD Investor Podcast. So today we're going to be talking about mistakes that new doctors make in terms of what it takes to make sure there's not a lot of pitfalls that you're falling into when you first start out. I know for a fact I started out with a lot of mistakes, and I want to try to help other people avoid those. So welcome back to the podcast. I am Dr. Butler, the MD Investor, and if you like the content, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's get into it. So let's talk about some of the mistakes that a lot of new doctors might be making when they're getting started. And one of those mistakes while getting started happens to be a very simple mistake. It's a very simple mistake indeed, and to the point where you're like, why did you mention that? Like, Dr. Butler, that seems like common sense. Why would you even bring that up? And I bring it up because no matter how common of sense it might seem, everyone or a lot of people can still easily fall into this trap, and that's not paying attention. That's the number one mistake a lot of doctors make when they first get starting into their new job, is not paying attention. You got into medicine more than likely to help people, not necessarily to do it as a spark of business. If you're not doing it as a business itself, if you're not approaching it as a business itself, then that means it's a lot easier to be manipulated and to fall into a lot of different traps. What I mean by that is, you come in, you're the doe-eyed new doctor, and you're like, I can't wait to help people. This is my first new job. I'm finally out of residency. I finally get to have some control in my life. I'm finally going to start making some real money. This is going to be fantastic. And then all of a sudden, you get hit in the face. And you get hit in the face by real life, because what's happening is you did not pay attention to the fact that you're transitioning from a school-based system or a learning-based entity into the real world, and no one has training wheels for that transition. They should. It'd be extremely helpful. That's why I'm here, to help you out. But in reality is, if you didn't have that kind of training wheel system, then you realize that you can get slapped in the face pretty quickly. Not paying attention to small and subtle things like, what are the payouts for how you're getting paid? Issues with your salary, for example. How's that going to work with your taxes? How are you getting paid? Are you getting paid as a W-2 or a 1099? Are you setting up yourself with a 401k to match with that company or not? Depending on what you're doing with your money, are you investing it? Are you saving it? And how are you spending it? In this case, that transition and not paying attention to those little key details end up costing a lot of people a lot of money and a lot of time. And you really don't want to be doing that. The next issue is something that I've honestly fallen into very quickly, which is spending too much money too quickly, spending too much too early. The issue with that is, at least for myself, is when I went to transition from being a resident to being an attending, I wasn't spending too much on frivolous things. Like I mentioned before, sometimes I have friends who would buy very lucrative or luxury things, like very nice cars or very nice homes and things of that nature. The home that I bought was very moderate. It wasn't very special. It wasn't like a mansion or anything of that nature. The house was pretty much regular. Now, the thing that changed, or the thing that was extra different, was that I still spent money too quickly based on not budgeting. So, for example, let's say you move from a location that you're in. I give you myself as an example. I went from being in New York to being in Pennsylvania to get my first job. Living in New York is expensive. Living in Pennsylvania is not as expensive as living in New York. However, once you transition, you have to transition with a budget in mind, because what your salary sounds like isn't what you're about to get. You know, there's taxes involved, there's things that you're going to be paying for, your health insurance, your car insurance, your house insurance if you bought a new house, whatever it is, the maintenance of the place that you're living in. So let's say, for example, you move to a location and that place has a pool and you get a pool guy, or you move to a location and it has a nice yard, and if you're not cutting the grass, you get people to come cut your grass. So now you create expenses that weren't there before, like maybe landscaping and just small maintenance things that you wouldn't think about, but they add up very quickly. So you end up spending too much very fast, and that ends up being an issue. The next one is saving less than 20%. So when I say saving less than 20%, a lot of people think that when it comes to saving that they'll have time to save later. But again, this is the MD Investor Podcast. Investing is all about time aspect. The sooner you invest, the sooner you get a return on your investment, and you get an exponential compounding growth on that investment. So in this case, if you're saving early, you're putting in work early. However, you can't save yourself to salvation. So in this case, if you're not saving at all, there's no salvation whatsoever. But in order to actually have salvation, you have to be able to invest in something that's going to continue to perpetuate cash flow. You have to have cash flow at all times. And as a new doctor, your only source of cash flow is yourself. So being a doctor is difficult in the regards of financing because you are the main source, kind of like a hamster wheel that's powering a light bulb. You don't get any light if you're not running on the hamster wheel. And in this case, if you're a doctor, working shifts is what gets you paid. Even if you're salary based, you're still obligated to work a certain amount of shifts. If you're outpatient based, you're going to have some kind of volume requirement. And if you have your own practice, then the thing is you have to meet your minimum overhead. You have to be able to pay your staff in order to expand, in order to have multiple offices, and in order to have increasing revenue, you have to actually meet a volume because that's how insurances are working nowadays. And unfortunately, that means that you have to also have contingencies in place, and you have to have a way to save for what you need. So in this case, when I say savings, I typically mean with savings is savings for emergency. But in terms of everything else, I have savings for emergencies, like my car tire blows out or something of that nature, or I need an emergency oil change, or you have a kid with a broken arm. That's an emergency, something you couldn't prepare for because you didn't know it was going to happen, but you still have the funds for it. So that's something you want to be prepared for. And now the rest of that involves in investing. So for myself, initially, I was not investing at all. I had almost nothing in the bank. I had nothing in my savings. I had nothing at all to show for a full year of work. Like an entire year of my life passed by and I was at the same job, which is not a problem. However, I didn't have anything else to show for the time that I traded. I was trading my time for this money, and in return for that money, the money was being spent on expenses for living. So I wasn't any further ahead in life than I started off. That part was very distressing. So that's why it's important to make sure that you're saving. So far we covered a few things. One of them is making sure that you're not spending too much too fast. You're saving 20% or more. Now, when I became an MD investor, or when I started thinking like an investor, that flipped on its head significantly. And I went to saving like 90% and investing 90% of all of my income and living on about 10%. So when I say that I spent that money investing, I went to squalor. Like I actually sold my home and moved in with my parents. And I moved in with my parents with a full family. So it wasn't like, hey, I moved in with my parents and it's just like I'm just a young kid. No, I have a full family, a wife and children, and I was still living with my parents. Not a lot of people will do that. The type of sacrifice that is not easy to manage. And in this case, it is something that was necessary for me to actually do what I wanted to accomplish. And so it was more so long-term investment, long-term output, long-term gains is what I was looking for, and short-term pain. So it's like you fight through the short-term pain in order to enjoy the long-term rewards. So that's a little bit. Another issue is not enough insurance. Now, personally, I have a lot of insurance. I have disability insurance, I have life insurance, I have term life insurance. And the reason is because you never know. So not having enough insurance is like not having a policy to protect yourself. So I know of people who are injured and they can't practice anymore. And I actually know of a few people like that, and things happen. People have strokes, people have heart attacks, people have disabilities that occur, and you're not protecting yourself. So I'm not here to sell you disability insurance or life insurance. That is your personal choice. However, I highly recommend it. For myself, I have what's called like disability insurance, and I don't remember the name of it, but it basically means that it's like if I can't work as a physician anymore, I will get covered with disability insurance. I can still do other jobs, but if for some reason I am no longer able to be a doctor, let's say for example I have a stroke and I'm no longer able to mentally practice medicine, however I can still, I don't know, teach, for example. So I can't practice medicine, I will get paid as a disability for not being able to practice medicine, but I can still have another full-time job as a teacher or something of that nature. Whatever it may be. Non-occupational insurance, I think that's what it's called. It's a form of disability insurance. So not having enough insurance is another issue that a lot of new doctors fall into the trap of, because it's cheaper when you're younger. So the younger you are, the cheaper the insurance is, because it's a ratios game. There's less likely a chance that you're going to injure yourself when you're younger in terms of like having a catastrophic disability occur to you, because one is they're betting that you don't want to get hurt, and then you're also betting that you hope that you don't get hurt as well. The next one is the wrong type of insurance. So having the wrong type of insurance can be an issue as well. So one of the wrong type of insurance is whole life insurance. Is a great way to build up a system where you can bank and borrow against yourself. We call that infinite banking, and it's a huge catalyst for building wealth. However, for doctors tend to be patsies for this one, because doctors don't know a ton about it. But the issue is that whole life insurance policies can be extremely expensive premiums. And those premiums, what happens is when people are selling you insurance, what they do is they'll get a return on the premium that they're selling to you. So let's say, for example, it's an $80,000 policy and they get $10,000 of that. You just gave $10,000 to someone for selling you the insurance policy. So essentially, it's like you paid them a huge finder's fee. That's not uncommon, because insurance selling is a huge market and a huge game. That's where a lot of finances are in the world. All of the money is actually in insurance. But in this case, you don't want to be someone else's patsy. Like, you don't want to be buying insurance for for the sake that you're going to be lining their pockets and then have coverage that is going to take a long time for you to actually get a return on your investment from. You want to be able to make sure it's priced well. So whole life insurance is important, and it's great for generational wealth building and for having the proper leverage to borrow against and to build a portfolio for yourself. Like, you can use it for investments, you can use it for all kinds of things, but it has to be priced right, or you end up wasting a lot of your money, and we don't want to do that. The other issue is having the terrible or a wrong financial advisor. If your financial advisor doesn't know what they're doing, then you are in a boat where you also don't know what you're doing. So a financial advisor is someone who advises you on where to put your money and how to manage it. So in this case, you should have a lot of standards for your financial advisor. So you have to understand the fee structure. You have to understand how often they are going to be moving and allocating funds for you, in terms of, most of the times it's like a portfolio management. So a lot of times, let's say you're a long-term investor with a low yield of risk. If you're just doing this for a long-term portfolio, most of the times you can manage this yourself. You don't have to go chase individual things or individual people. You can actually just set up a portfolio that's going to be there for a long time, because your goal is to hold it for 10 to 20 to 30 years, maybe for life, depending on the company and depending why you believe in that company. But in this case, imagine that I want to buy a company. I'm like, hey, let me buy some stock in Apple. I'm going to hold it for 20 years. Why am I paying someone to manage that account for me? It doesn't make a ton of sense. Like, for example, if I'm only buying stocks and all I do is buy the stocks, I don't trade them, I don't do anything else, I just buy them and let them sit. People have financial advisors, and that's all they do. They buy stuff, they let it sit, and your financial advisor literally is getting percentages for making sure that nothing changes. And nothing will change because the company sits there. You're not sitting there managing it. You don't work at Apple. You're not doing that kind of stuff. So if that's the case, then you might have the wrong financial advisor, or someone who's just kind of taking advantage of the fact that you don't know what you're doing. And that happens often. The other issue is not setting up or planning for retirement properly. So what I mean by that is, if you're planning for your retirement, how are you doing this? So you can plan for your own retirement. You can set up your own 401ks. You can set up your own business. Retirement is not something I truly believe in. So when I say that, I mean is there's no magic number that's going to make it so that you don't want to exist. That's a weird way of saying it. But what I mean, for example, is let's say if I had, $20 million in my pocket right now, would I retire? The answer is no. I'm young. I would still either be working on I might not work in the hospital, but I would be working on projects. I would work on other things. I would be working on my podcast or building out a studio. I would be working on other things. So there's no magic retirement number. You would just be bored. So retirement usually happens when you get to an age where you physically can't do what you want to do anymore. And what you want is to have funds to make sure that you can continue to live the life that you want to live, even though you can't work the way you used to work. That's essentially what retirement is. It's not some magic number where you're like, I can't wait until I turn 68 so I can go to the beach in the Maldives. Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. If you want to go to the Maldives, you should go now before they disappear. Or if you want to go and visit the Machu Picchu, you have to do it now. Like, there's no reason to wait until you're too old, you're too tired, you're too frustrated, or you have all the money in the world. Let's say you hit that magic number, you hit 20, 30, 40 million dollars in your account, and then all of a sudden you're like, I think I'll go to Dubai now. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Life is happening, time is moving, everything is flowing forward now. You have to enjoy it now, which is a lot easier said than done, especially the way our world works and the way we pretty much function. You have to do things while they're occurring. There's too many distractions in life, and there's nothing that's promised to you. So that's why I say retirement is something that's kind of like more of a cliched idea. What really matters is continually perpetuating cash flow so you can live the lifestyle that you want always and indefinitely until you're no longer living. What else is there? There's also issues with people doing investing. So again, I'm the investor. I teach people how to invest, how to do stocks, how to do options, how to do trading, how to do all of those things to create more income for yourself. However, a lot of people think that they can chase stocks. You might have a lot of doctors who are like, oh, I bought Tesla and I love Tesla, I love the company. That's great, especially if you're holding it for a very long time. That's something that you always want to have. But picking individual stocks is like going to the grocery store and picking up a single apple. It doesn't make a lot of sense to just pick one stock and have that stock without having other things to balance it out. There's a reason it's called the SP 500, or there's a reason it's the Dow Jones Index. It is an index. It is a group of things that are working together, and they have been working together. If the Standard & Poor's has 500 companies and they're the best 500 companies, why would you want to focus on picking one company and hoping that one company is the next Tesla or the next Amazon or the next whatever? Because every single company there is, they have highs, they have lows, they have ups, they have downs. You want some kind of balance, something that's going to stand the test of time. And if you're not a better CEO than Elon Musk, or you don't know how to run a company like Tim Cook, then why are you trying to compete? That's just my take on it. So, for example, if I can't run SpaceX better than Elon Musk, why am I competing with Elon Musk? Let me just buy stocks of the company index that holds all of these companies. So whichever one does great, great. The ones that suck, they'll balance out, and it's okay. I don't have to worry about it. That's the difference between investing and then trading and picking stocks. And a lot of new doctors want to try to pick hot stocks to try to make money, or try to pick hot stocks to try to get rich quick schemes, and those always fail. And trying to chase money in that capacity leads to you losing money in that capacity, and that's unfortunate. And we're not trying to get that done. We're trying to create wealth, and we're trying to create a legacy and build for generations to come. I want to live for today, build for tomorrow, enjoy today, and enjoy tomorrow. I don't want to build for today and still be struggling tomorrow. That doesn't defeat that defeats the purpose. One of the other things I wanted to talk about also, which is kind of funny, is this is probably more so older doctors instead of younger doctors, but paying someone to manage mutual funds, that's just a silly game. Don't do that. And the reason is because a mutual fund, it's a mutual fund. Literally, you shouldn't be wasting it. It's 80 to 90% of the time, a mutual fund does not outperform the market. You can just buy a low cost index from Vanguard or something like that. You can buy VOO and hold it for 30 years and never have to worry about being lost to a mutual fund or a hedge fund. So that's almost like not worth mentioning, but it still happens at a surprising rate. So I thought I would mention that. And the last thing to mention that a lot of doctors make mistakes on are exotic investments. So when I say exotic investments, those are investments that are targeted as targeted for doctors based on the income that they make. This is why a lot of doctors lose a lot of wealth, because they gamble on exotic things that don't necessarily make sense. Like, for example, if someone's like, hey, I had this new marijuana or cannabis campaign company that's being formed and all we need is $50,000. The average person in America usually can't field $50,000 that quickly, versus someone who's like a physician. Let's say you give you a few months, you could probably put that money together. So in this case, you take a big ticket purchase all at one time and you put that money up, and the return on that investment is none. That's why doctors lose investments fast. And the issue is, you got quotes like, Warren Buffett will say the number one rule of investing is don't lose money. And the number two rule is like, listen to rule number one. Like, don't forget rule number one, because once you lose that money, you have to reset and you have to start by being lower than when you started off of. Like, for example, if you were in stocks and you were down 30%, it's not 30% to get back to zero. You have to gain an exceeding amount in order to make up the difference. And I don't want you to lose that, okay? I want you to be able to gain and build. So in this case, there's risk funds that you use to actually gain capital or create income. Then there's investing funds. Investing funds are meant to help you build for the future. They're not meant to be lost and going back and forth and yo-yoing and things of like that nature. Anyway, these are just some of the things that I've also fallen into traps for when I first started out, and I want to make sure that other people don't fall into this traps. It's not just for doctors, it's for other people, high income earners, people who are like, again, if you're like a nurse or you're a firefighter or you're a police officer, you have an actual career. So in this case, in this career, you might be earning good money, and with that good money, you start to wonder where to put that money. Sometimes people just spend it. So I know a lot of nurses might travel and they might just go on vacation and buy nice things. And then there are others who want to invest but not sure where to invest. So in this case, this is what this podcast is for: teaching you, showing you what pitfalls to avoid, and then also helping you and teaching you where to go and move forward. So again, you can always go to themdinvestor.com. So if you're looking for help, you're looking for coaching, you're looking for learning how to invest, how to build, how to grow, I'm always here to help you build, learn, and grow. And again, if you guys like the content, if it's something that's helpful for you, if you feel like you're getting something out of that, then please subscribe, and you can always get more information. I'm always wishing you guys the best. I wish you health, wealth, and happiness, and I will see you next time.